Living in the shadow of an unthinkable tragedy, a US ambassador is haunted by unsettling events and ominous signs. Thrust into a world where ancient prophecies come to life, he begins to suspect his adopted son may be the very figure foretold in the Book of Revelation. From the eternal sea he rises, creating armies on either shore, turning man against his brother, and makes me stand in awe. On a stormy evening in 1973, Hollywood producer Harvey Bernhardt's phone rang unexpectedly. On the other end was Bob Munger, an advertising executive with a movie idea. Intrigued, they met for lunch on Hollywood Boulevard, where Munger's first question was if Bernhardt had ever read the Book of Revelation. Bernhardt, thinking Munger, a devout born-again Christian, might be attempting a conversion, humored him. But Munger's pitch was far from a sermon. What about a movie about a child who is the Antichrist? Bernhardt immediately set his sandwich aside and returned to his office. After drafting a few pages and sensing the film's potential, he reached out to screenwriter David Seltzer, paying him in advance to bring the story to life. A year later, Seltzer delivered the script, originally titled The Antichrist, later The Birthmark. What eventually made it to the screen was quite different from what had originally been written, filled with devils, cloven hooves, and all the typical trappings of supernatural horror. Every major studio in Hollywood turned it down, likely fearing that it would come off as cheesy when adapted to the big screen. Enter the American director Richard Donner, who had yet to make his major breakthrough, expressed interest in the project. He suggested a radical change to the script, removing overt supernatural explanations and replacing them with a more subtle, suspense-driven mystery. However, screenwriter David Seltzer didn't agree with this new direction, and a bit of a scuffle ensued. Ultimately, Donner prevailed, and Fox agreed to finance the film with $2.8 million, eager to capitalize on the success of The Exorcist from 3 years earlier. The legendary actor Gregory Peck was the first choice for the lead role of Robert Thorne, the American ambassador to the UK who faces a series of tragic events as he uncovers the terrifying truth about his adopted son. Peck's agent was a close friend of Donner's, and after meeting with him, the actor eagerly agreed to join the project. Already an Academy Award winner with several nominations under his belt, the crew was thrilled to secure one of the Hollywood all-time greats for the role. Peck was drawn to the film's substance, particularly the dramatic themes it explored, and his performance earned him the Best Actor in a Horror Film at the Saturn Awards. Although it was stated Peck was always the original top choice, other notable names were also considered for the role, including the legendary Charlton Heston, who turned it down, the iconic English Hellraiser Oliver Reed, and even William Holden, who would later take on the lead role in the first sequel. More unconventional choices included Charles Bronson, Dick Van Dyke, and the recent star of Jaws, it's Roy Scheider.
Smile, you son of a bitch!
Lee Remick was cast in the role of Catherine Thorne, Robert's unnerved wife. By this point, Remick had already established a solid career with several notable roles and multiple Best Actress nominations. Director Richard Donner was looking for an actress who could convey both sophistication and vulnerability, qualities that Remick embodied perfectly. With the casting of both Gregory Peck and Lee Remick, the film secured 2 major stars, which, while boosting the film's appeal, left little room for flexibility in the budget. Finding the perfect child actor to play the Antichrist Damien Thorne proved to be an incredibly challenging task. The casting team began by auditioning candidates one at a time, then moved to 2, then 3, eventually having as many as 6 kids auditioning every 5 minutes. One girl was initially considered a potential choice, but her sweet nature made it impossible to provoke her into a menacing role. Then came child actor number 367, Harvey Spencer Stevens, a 4.5-year-old with the right intensity. Donner decided to test the young actor's potential by asking him to hit him as hard as he could. Harvey wasted no time, landing a solid hook to Donner's face that split his lip, followed by a headbutt, a vicious kick to the groin, and even yanking his hair with an alarming force that no 4.5-year-old should be capable of. After that display, it was clear this was the Antichrist they were looking for. Finally, David Warner was cast in the role of Keith Jennings, a photographer who becomes Robert's eager accomplice in his quest to uncover the truth. While Thorne was the skeptic, constantly grappling with the moral implications of his actions, Jennings was the more assertive voice, taking action where Thorne hesitated. Smaller roles were also filled with talented and experienced actors. Billy Whitelaw played Mrs. Baylock, Damien's nanny who becomes unnervingly devoted to protecting the child. Whitelaw's performance earned her a nomination for the Best Supporting Actress at the BAFTA Awards and a win for the same category at the Evening Standard British Film Awards. Patrick Troughton, best known for his role as Doctor Who, portrayed Father Brennan, the priest who serves as the harbinger of doom. The Australian actor Leo McKern was cast as the exorcist Carl Bugenhagen. Though he was uncredited for his role, it's worth noting his contribution here. The legend, that is Jerry Goldsmith, composed the haunting score for The Omen, including the iconic piece Ave Satani or Hail Satan. For this, he won an Academy Award, his only Oscar despite having received 17 additional nominations throughout his illustrious career. The Gregorian-style choral chant, which became one of the most memorable aspects of the film, carries an eerie sense of foreboding. Filming for The Omen began in October 1975 and wrapped up by December. The production took place in various locations including London, nearby areas like Woking and Guildford, as well as in Rome, the stunning Italian countryside in Frosinone, and finally in Jerusalem. The famous graveyard scene was almost certainly filmed at a soundstage, though it's tough to find concrete sources for this. If anyone has more information, feel free to share it in the comments. In the movie, the graveyard is portrayed as an Etruscan cemetery, but given its appearance and the fact that the Etruscan civilization ended over 2000 years ago, it was clearly designed to evoke something much more modern. The zoo scenes were filmed at Windsor Safari Park, where the baboons were left unfed the night before filming, which made them rather irritable. The animal trainer, seated in the back with the lead baboon, drove the primate horde into a frenzy. The car didn't have laminated safety glass, which meant there was a real risk the windscreen could shatter during the scene. Lee Remick's terror in the shot was no act. She couldn't drive a stick shift and struggled to drive away in the chaos of the moment. A lot has been said about The Omen being a cursed movie, largely due to the series of strange occurrences during its production. Crew members' planes were struck by lightning on several occasions. While this isn't that rare, happening once or twice a year to a passenger plane, it certainly adds to the eerie reputation. Additionally, IRA bombings targeted locations the crew had planned to visit, which, while unsettling, is more coincidental than supernatural. However, the most unsettling event happened while special effects supervisor John Richardson was filming A Bridge Too Far in Holland. He was involved in a horrific car crash that killed his assistants.
The accident was on the road to a town called Omen, and it had 66 kilometres on the sign.
And at that very spot, the number 666.
Now that sounds incredible. I did some open source research, and it turns out the road signs in the Netherlands don't give distances in fractions of a kilometer, though kilometer markers do. I found a blog that had already done a lot of legwork, referencing a local journalist and retired police officer who was on duty at the time of the incident and remembered it well. The location in question was between Raalte and Deventer, along the N348, near where the road passes over Meenweg, and there are two gentle curves, probably these ones. Richardson and his assistant were driving towards Deventer when they veered into the wrong lane, possibly due to a lapse in attention. Keep in mind that they were British and accustomed to driving on the left side of the road. Looking at this location on Google Street View, there's no sign pointing to Omen, but there is a kilometer marker reading 60. It's possible that there was an older marker that read 60.0. Perhaps in a distressed state, Richardson misread the numbers, or maybe the zeros had worn down to look like sixes. The distance to Omen from this location is less than 30 kilometers. Even with possible detours in the 1970s, the distance was still under 50 kilometers, so there was no road sign that read Omen 66.6. What I'm getting at is, be skeptical when you come across these fantastic stories circulating online. But now, back to the movie. The Omen was released on the 6th day of the 6th month in 1976, because of course it was. Reception from critics was, as usual, mixed. While many praised the soundtrack, strong performances and memorable scenes, others dismissed it as silly, goofy or dull. Roger Ebert and Gene Siskel both gave it a fairly average 2.5 stars out of 4. The audiences begged to differ. The Omen was a huge hit in the box office, making $61 million against its meager $3 million budget. Donner believed this was because it's just great entertainment, and while provocative, it left much for the audience to interpret. The success also played a surprising role in enabling Star Wars to become a reality a year later. 20th Century Fox was now in a financially secure position, and Omen's massive profit allowed the studio to take a risk on George Lucas realizing his ambitious and financially demanding vision. The movie also spawned 2 original sequels few years apart, and another attempt in 1991. A shot-for-shot remake was made in 2006 that included actors like Liev Schreiber and Mia Farrow, who already had experience nursing the Antichrist more than 3 decades earlier. A prequel called The First Omen was released in 2024. I would love to delve deeper into these movies in another video if you, my audience, so wish. A stillborn lost to grief, and a priest suggests a way. A stranger is brought home, a price the world must pay. From a hospital-shadowed hall to a home in England's heart, foul events begin to follow, their lives torn apart. At a party, death takes hold, and Nanny's life is claimed. A warning from a priest, only done in vain. From the father's prophetic words to a photo's eerie sight, the science begins to surface and a plan comes to light. To Rome they travel desperate, seeking answers buried deep. A stolen life in Jackal's grave lays in eternal sleep. But back in England, horror, Kathy's life is torn away, Robert's soul now broken, as the devil had his say. In Israel, the truth, a weapon is revealed, a friend is lost forever, his resolve now sealed. The devil's mark discovered, the servant sent to hell, rushed to sacred ground at the last toll of bell. Father's final burden, conviction found too late. As the knife ascends, the police seal his fate. As we watch Robert's journey, we feel the weight of his choices. He is a man caught between his duty as a father and the horrific realization that his son is destined to destroy the world as we know it. This tension drives the film and makes it far more than just a supernatural thriller. It's a meditation on fate, responsibility, and the helplessness we sometimes feel in the face of forces beyond our control. A study of the power of belief, the fear of destiny, and the relationship between parent and child. The Omen transcends its supernatural premise and taps into the deepest fears of parenthood. It's easy to see the resemblance to Rosemary's Baby, which came out a decade earlier. The dilemma in that was even deeper, as the maternal bond is even more personal, with the Antichrist also being her flesh and blood, while in The Omen, the blood relation was simply just a lie. I am not a religious person, although religious horror movies are very close to my heart. I think Robert's moral conflict becomes ever so slightly biblical. His struggle to reconcile his paternal love feels like an echo of Abraham's sacrifice of Isaac. In the case of Abraham, the sacrifice is a test of faith in God's plan. For Robert, the sacrifice is a test of his love for humanity and his willingness to stop the coming destruction. I still remember when I was in Sunday school as a kid, and Abraham's willingness to kill his own son was something that was supposed to be quietly revered. Something I could not understand and found it a bit distasteful, to be honest. Abraham could at least hide behind the classic "I was just obeying orders" excuse, while Robert is allowed no such luxury, and he has to plan his actions based on the horrifying set of circumstances he has personally uncovered and interpreted. While he pleads for help from above, there is no divine intervention, no angelic hordes come forth. Devil's influence is everywhere, God's help is nowhere to be seen. He knows in his desperation that even if he would succeed, the world would surely see him as a lunatic and condemn him for all eternity. The film's devastating conclusion seals several fates but leaves us with a lingering question. Is there truly any escaping fate? Did Robert even have a chance, or were the wheels of destiny being set in motion and the outcome preordained? There is nothing overtly supernatural in the film except maybe the photographs. Was Damien even the Antichrist in the first place, or was it all just delusion, fueled by freak coincidences and echo chamber enforcements?
We've all become God's madmen.
The performances elevate this tragic story, especially Gregory Peck's portrayal of Robert Thorne. Peck's portrayal of a man who slowly loses everything he holds dear is both heart-wrenching and terrifying. He had tragically lost his eldest son just when filming began, and was still dealing with the grief, which must have made this role particularly personal for him. Special mention also needs to go to Patrick Troughton's masterful portrayal of the haunted Father Brennan. That desperate urgency and his 1,000-mile stare are just incredibly powerful elements in the movie's mood setting. Billy Whitelaw's Mrs. Baylock is equally unsettling, and the casting here is just spot on. And it's always wonderful to see David Warner, who I think is a bit underappreciated. Donner's direction is also very strong, and he managed to do so much with quite little. The Exorcist had more than 4 times the budget, and considering the price of the cast and filming in 3 countries, he really made those $3 million last. And of course the iconic Ave Satani theme, its chilling notes seared into our collective memory. It's one of the greatest scores ever composed for any film, and it joins John Williams' theme from Jaws and the Kronos Quartet theme from Requiem for a Dream in my top list of the most powerful movie themes ever composed. The Omen works not just as a supernatural horror film, but as a reflection of our deepest anxieties about parenthood. Its legacy endures because it touches on something that remains universal across generations: the fear of losing our children and the terrifying idea that evil can manifest in the most innocent of forms and might be closer to us than we ever realized. When critics cast their judgments, dismissed its chilling lore, yet still its shadow lingers till we all stand in awe. So, what did you think of The Omen? Do you ever create horrible poetry and then force people to listen? Whatever the case may be, please like and subscribe, and I will be back sometime with something else.